Nelson Mandela once said, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians." Apartheid was wrong for South Africans and it's wrong for Palestinians. From Ferguson to Palestine, freedom and justice for all.
We came here to organize and carry out this event in support of the people of Palestine, and in particular in support of the children of Palestine and the children in Gaza.
One misunderstanding about Israel is they call it a Jewish state, and they try to announce themselves as a religious state. This is not true. Israel is not a Jewish state. Israel is a Zionist state. There are many people in Israel today that are against the government. The young generation of Jewish abroad in the United States, they look at Israel differently now because of what they have seen on TV and on the news.
Like, once again, on the behalf of Congresswoman Jackson Lee, the 18th Congressional District, we do stand with you for peace and stand for justice. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, brother.
I have no response to anything because I'm not the Congresswoman.
Why Congresswoman stand with Israel? Why they were bombing the children in Gaza?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Well, what do you say about that?
Like I said, she stands for justice.
I know.
For all.
Okay. You come over here.
But thank you so much.
This is for
thank
children
you
of
so much
Gaza.
for today. And we also would like to recognize the Nation of Islam as well as CAIR, the Black Heritage. Continue to contact her office and other offices because this is your right. This is your right. This is your right.
We don't have the money that the defense contractors
Well, thank you
have.
so much.
So he ain't gonna listen.
So I'm going to conclude right now, and thank you so much for this morning. Take care.
Politicians like Sheila Jackson support the militarization of borders. She supports Israel. She supports the killing of innocent children and women. I just want to point that out because that's not right. And I'm not trying to offend that guy. We don't need those politicians. We need people like Brother Mohammed. We need people like Sister Ruth. We need people like Cherie. We don't need any of those people. I just want to say that.
Thank you. 2009, when Operation Cast Lead happened, it was just as bad as Operation Protective Edge, which just happened this summer. And the terms that they had agreed on was also to lift the blockade, but they were not met. I mean, nobody really focused on making sure that they were implemented.
Although the bombardment is stopped, but our job is not stopped. What media does, the corporate media does, they only talk about the Palestine and Israel when it's a bombardment, and after that they just forget about it. There's no interview, there's no follow-up.
There is a bias in the media, unfortunately, against the oppressed, and only when the oppressed then begins to see that they have the upper hand on the oppressor, then the media will switch sides. But in this particular instance, you're seeing a people who have a legitimate gripe, like the black man in America, the Native American, the poor in this country, and the people in Gaza and Palestine, and even the Israelis or the Jews who are protesting against their government's policies, who seek a reconciliation between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
When one begins to study Jesus, one begins to pick up the fact that Jesus was a person who was on the side of the poor, on the side of the people who were marginalized by Roman economic imperialism. One begins to see a Jesus who was committed to the empowerment of people who were conditioned to feel bad about themselves. It was Christians who took their ships from America and went over to Africa and then brought back people by the millions and enslaved them for 200 or 300 years in the name of Jesus. And their theology, their ideology, their philosophy was that I must enslave you in order for you to understand who God is. Your conversion is dependent on your enslavement.
But today now we see the nexus between what's going on in Ferguson and what happened in Gaza. It's not to compare the slaughter of what took place in Gaza as to what took place with Michael Brown as an individual, but it's the same principles that are involved.
From Gaza to Ferguson, let's connect the dots. Brothers and sisters, at this hour, the reason why we stand in the shadow of the statue of Dr. Martin Luther King is because at a certain point in time, Dr. Martin Luther King was no longer a civil rights leader.
Right.
He began to care about international human rights.
Solve with justice, then the people of Israel and Palestine can live in peace, true peace. But what they're asking for now in the demilitarization of Gaza and West Bank is actually surrender. And the people who are oppressed will never surrender. Americans will never surrender, and neither will the Palestinian people.
There'll never be any peace until you understand that America has some unfinished business here in America. If she cannot give her 400-year-old slaves who have given their blood, sweat, and tears and helped build this country so that every immigrant group can enjoy it, then what makes you think her foreign policy is going to give justice and even-handedness to your people? How can you blame the Palestinian people for the over 2,000 deaths, 400 plus of children and women, innocent non-combatants, and then say it's their fault that they're dead? And what did they do in Ferguson? Here's a boy that was shot 6 times, probably shot at 11 times, but was shot 6 times, and then they try to blame him for some kind of candy store robbery that had no relationship to why the officer stopped him. Blame the victim, just like they're blaming you for resisting what? Them coming and taking your land and you stand up? Isn't that the American story of the 13 colonies when they felt oppressed by King George? That they picked up weapons and fought for their independence? Then what less do we expect for the Palestinian people? That they would have self-determination and their human rights and the ability to grow their vineyards and to raise their sheep and to raise their family and to go to universities and have a job and have a future and to build and to contribute to civilization. What makes them any less human than anyone else? Who wants to live under occupation? The Holy Quran says that there's time when persecution is worse than slaughter. And the people have decided now there's death before dishonor. Whenever people are desperate and they have no way to express themselves, they will give their lives before they'll be oppressed.
And so what we're hearing from actually is the Zionist machine, which is a political movement. It has little or nothing to do with religion. In fact, the early rabbis who heard it in Europe when it came up, they condemned it. We're all being used as tools. The working class people of this world are being used as tools to fight the proxy war of those who are over us. It's about using religion as a shield, getting the people all stirred up.
Remember that the map that they have that's called the Middle East is an aberration. It is the imagination of Winston Churchill and the French and the English government under the Sykes-Picot agreement after the destruction of the Ottoman Empire. There's no such thing as Lebanon in its present borders. There's no such thing as Syria in its present borders. There's no such thing as Transjordania or Jordan in its present borders. There's really no such thing as Saudi Arabia. It was Arabia. How did it become Saudi Arabia? You need to go back and check your history.
He went against parental authority. He went against parental authority. He became the focus of controversy in the community. He created fear and anxiety in the hearts and minds of not only his mother and father, but of the whole community. They were all looking for him. But he said, to hell with it. I want to do me. Knowledge is worth the risk.